Uncensored, no holds barred talk. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is Global Reality Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of the Global Reality right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. This is Monday, January the 24th, 2011. We're glad you could join us here for this big, jam-packed, manic Monday edition of the broadcast. We've got just a gargantuan amount of things to talk about, discuss with you here today on the show. Running the gamut of topics from current news and information to the occult and esoteric symbology and the phony patriot and truth movement, Alex Jones. We've got every bit of those topics for you here today on the broadcast. So if you are interested in any one of those topics, you will definitely want to stick around for the duration of the broadcast here today as we get into a lot of these subjects and topics and as they pertain to new and current events and the ongoing attempt to expose not only what the the larger powers that be are doing, steering world events and trying to get us towards an absolute gamut of total control, but also what is happening and going on with the people that pretend to be telling you the information pertaining to those entities as well, but again, are only giving you half the story. And I want everyone out there to know, in case you're new to this information, because we're getting a lot of new listeners lately, that end of it cannot be sidestepped. It cannot be relegated it to some area where, because there are some levels of research and some things where people find out about it, certain topics of information and they go, well, yeah, that's true. And yeah, that's, I see that's, absolutely the case. But, to me, it's not as big as the issue of the bankers or the Jews or whatever issue, somebody particularly takes on as the most important issue to themselves. Everybody tends to find I think everybody has one particular issue they think is more important than all the other issues. It doesn't make it so. It doesn't make it wrong either. That's just the way it is. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing either. But particularly sometimes people, tend to latch onto one issue and then other issues they don't see as being important. And I think that all people need to understand that these lies that are being perpetrated against good-meaning people who are just trying to affect change and to wake up the sleeping masses out there, and they're being led down these bad roads by entities that are whole cloth working for the same establishment that these entities allege to be exposing. And I believe that the time has come for us to no longer consider that research, that information, things that may pertain to the Jesuit Order, the John Birch Society, the Council for National Policy, the Patriot Movement, the Truth Movement, these lies being exposed to me here at the beginning of 2011 can no longer be relegated to some other level of the conspiracy research fringe. What I mean is, right now it's time for all of us to understand and to put it at the forefront of our minds that this information is as important as any other information that we have learned about up to this date. It's just hard for that perception to take over and become that way because the perception for so long has been focused on yeah, real stuff. The New World Order, the Illuminati, the UN takeover, blah, 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 all the way. But again, the other part of that information is just as important, and it's time that everybody starts to understand. I think everybody needs to understand that it is just as important as anything else. And so I think we need to start coming from that standpoint. Especially with what we talked about on Friday when I did a quick important info broadcast about this stuff pertaining to Seymour Hersh. And Seymour Hersh now coming out with all this information on the Sovereign Military Order of Malta and the rest of it. Now, I understand the angles. And people have tried to. I can't believe it. I really. I'm sort of not really, I guess, disappointed, but I'm just sort of dismayed a little bit by the reaction or lack of a reaction to some of you out there to this information. I really, I am. I've got to say, I'm a little bit disappointed. Some of you out there had a real shitty sort of apathetic attitude to this information, and I think that's dangerous. And I think those of you out there that took sort of an apathetic stance on this Seymour Hersh, talking about the Knights of Malta stuff, I guess it's a little bit different when you haven't been putting this information out, putting your ass and your balls on the line every day for 4 goddamn years, exposing this with people laughing at you and not fucking paying attention to anything that you have to say. I guess it's a lot easier just to say, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, he's just doing that because he's trying to rile up the Muslims over there. And that's a part of the CIA's operation. They're allowing him to come out with this information so he can rile the Muslims up more, so they'll have more targets to shoot. And I'm not going to say that's false. I'm not going to say that's not right. Or, oh, this will help you. As soon as more mainstream people hear Seymour Hersh talk about this, they'll take these topics more seriously and come look at your information. No. This is about controlling the perimeters of the conversation. This is about controlling what is accepted as fact when it comes to the information pertaining to the Knights of Malta or Opus Dei or any of this other stuff. That way, when anything else gets introduced into the conversation, the way that the intelligentsia will attempt to debunk that information will be by saying, well, if Seymour Hersh didn't say it and Seymour Hersh didn't put that in his book, then how can that be correct? Because if it was correct, Josh, what you're saying, what Lee Rogers is saying, or whoever else is saying, must not be true if it wasn't in Seymour Hersh's book. And that is the bottom line, number one reason for this Hersh operation. Period. End of story. You can talk to me all day long about riling up Muslims and getting them more targets to shoot. They don't need to pull this operation off. They don't have to have Hersh and Qatar talking about the Knights of Malta to rile up the Muslims. Okay? There are plenty of other things that they can do by that. The continuation of what's going on in Gaza, the continuation of the raping and pillaging and killing that's going on in the Arab world. They can print a story with somebody saying, all Muslims are baby-eating, people who are evil demons incarnated into, Arabic bloodline bodies. I mean, there's any number of things that they've done and continue to do where they could use this, this as an opportunity to rile up the Arab world. I don't know, man. I just failed to see, and I'm just kind of disappointed there are people out there that are trying to say that, oh, well, yeah, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. No, this thing with Hersh is an absolute operation that's being perpetrated in order to, again, rein it back in and pull the reins in on that information and the people that talk about it, just like they've done with Ancient Aliens. And now they're pulling in the reins on what is acceptable to talk about in the realm and scope of talking about the Anunnaki. You notice how many things they don't mention on Ancient Aliens. They never mention the fact that these ancient aliens seeded these bloodlines of the people in charge. How come they don't mention that? You see, that's always what they don't talk about and what they don't mention. That's the whole key thing here. I just got a message from Man Hydra. I was actually what I was going to, if you give me a minute and let me get into my show, you might be surprised at what I was going to talk about. I already had Man Hydra, our webmaster, he sent me an email message. I already had that all planned out, Man Hydra, what you were sending me. I've already got that all mapped out to talk about it. And I'll talk about it now so that I don't piss anybody off. Sometimes you just got to slam your fist down on the desk. Let you know, that makes you know that you're alive. Yeah, I was planning on getting into that. Thanks. I'd already had that mapped out. I already had all the information detailed, what I was going to talk about. So thanks. Anyway, I just, those of you out there want to send me messages and tell me that I should see the good thing in this Seymour Hersh thing. You know what? I'm sorry. I just, I can't see the good in it. I don't see the good in it. And this is after having 4 days of processing this. This is an operation. And again, maybe I guess I have a bit more of a, when I first started making The Secret Right Volume 2, up until the time that came out in April 2009, all the way up until right when it was about to be out, I was adding new stuff to it as it was coming out. And even up to that time, there was never even, they've never said the words Council for National Policy or CNP on any broadcast news television show that I had ever seen. Much less talk about the Knights of Malta. And then as soon as that film came out, after I'd sent it to a bunch of the liberal media outlets, we started to see Jeremy Scahill allowed to become on Democracy Now! And shows like that to talk about Blackwater and the connection of the Knights of Malta. Then Oberman starts talking about it. And it seems that ever since then, there has been sort of this slow trickle out and mentions and getting this stuff into the consciousness, because I have artificially introduced this stuff into the consciousness against the wishes of the master plan of the intelligentsia of the Illuminati and the New World Order. So this has thrown a wrench in their plan. So what they have to do now is they have to put out their corporate media shills and the rest of these folks out there. This is exactly why Jones has been talking about the CMP so much over the past several weeks, folks. He knew this was coming just as much as anybody else did. And so this information now, over the past 2 years, in the just absolute megalithic rise we've seen of people that now are aware of the Council for National Policy and are asking tough questions and are starting to ask tougher questions and finding more connections. The intelligence community is in an all-out scramble right now, trying to figure out how they can re-own the parameters of what the independent media and those of us who didn't, go get journalism majors and degrees from some fucking Jesuit university. You see, this is what it is. They know when this stuff gets out, it's going to be hot. So what they want to do is they want to go ahead and get there when this information gets hot and really starts to reach a lot more people. They want to make sure that they already have their mainstream clowns ready for the photo ops and the TV ops. That way, television news or whatever else doesn't go and start finding those of us who have been researching this for a long amount of time and getting our opinions. They want to make sure they have their own intelligentsia set up where they have the Seymour Hershes and whoever else ready to come in there. So if anybody has a question about the Knights of Malta or Opus Dei or Secret Vatican Orders or secret societies, well, let's not go to some of these guys who've been exposing this and making movies about this for years in the alternative media. No, let's go to one of our established journalists and get their mainline opinion on this stuff. It's a part of the operation, and if you don't see that it is, I'm sorry. That's your bad, not mine. But don't send me goddamn emails telling me that I need to look at this being used to enrage. I got 3 or 4 emails from people about that. Used to enrage the Muslims, and that's it. Bullshit. Pull your head out of your ass and see what this is really about. Okay? But anyway, we got a ton of news and information to get into with you here today on the show. I'm not going to open up the phone lines. I haven't been opening up the phone lines lately for multiple reasons. Number one, nobody's been calling in anyway. Number two, some days I just want to get up here and not talk to anybody else and do my thing and get out the information because there's tons of it. So we're going to be getting that out today. We Chipping Banner's there at the website to help us pay the bills for the month. Another thing I don't like is liars. I don't like liars. And there's been several times when I've been in past couple of years or past 3 or 4 years since I've been doing the show, I've had people just flat lie to me and spin yarns and I guess try to get me excited about something that they could just then not allow not to happen. But I don't know, back, I guess it was about 2008 when I was working on First Secret Right. I had a guy who used to call in regularly to the show back when I was on TruthNet Radio. And he was coming on the show pretty regularly all the time. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to give him any attention. But he used to come on the show and call pretty regularly and say that he called him one time and said that he was going to make this gigantic donation. He was going to donate $5,000 so Secret Right Volume 1 could be finished. And I gave this person my home address because I trusted them. And after I gave that person my home address, they never sent me anything and never called into the show before. And then, of course, we know what happened last year. But stuff like that. I had somebody do that about, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Somebody had sent me an email saying that they were going to, donate some cash or a big amount of cash, $1,000 or $2,000 or something like that. So we could get the rest of the gear to finish the Secret Right 2 soundtrack and then we get the packaging and the artwork done. And it never materialized, and, my thing is like, I don't care if you want to support my work or not. If you don't want to, then you don't want to. That's fine. You don't have to. But the fact of the matter is, when you make lies, when you make statements, when you say one thing and then you don't do it, and this happens over a period of time, you just got to know that your credibility and your trustworthiness to me is out the window. So don't, if you're going to send me shit like that, don't expect that I'm going to take anything seriously that you send me. If you send me something like a news story or something and say, talk about this on the air, your credibility is going to be shot with me. So, I guess I'll get the movie done when it's done. I'm sick of answering that question too. Info keeps coming out and it keeps becoming important that we have more of this stuff in there. So, it's going to be out when it's going to be out, that's just the way it is. So, and this is what Man Hydra had asked me about earlier, and I was well on my way to covering this and exposing this, but I guess patience is not something, the virtue that everybody out there has. Everybody's shitting themselves and wetting themselves and wanting to ask me about this goddamn Alex Jones thing, and I just wish to fuck I didn't have to talk about this clown today, but I guess I will. I guess Jones is doing some new gay ass fucking thing where he's ripping off the TV show V or whatever. And I guess it's like his Obama Joker poster thing, the publicity stunt he does about once a year prior to, he does the publicity stunt first. And then about a month after the publicity stunt, he has his fallout, knockdown, drag out of the year with another fellow Patriot host. I have a feeling we should get a death pool going and decide who it's going to be this year. I think it's going to be, what was the one guy that Jones, who was fear mongering all the swine flu stuff with Jones back in 2009? What was that guy's name? The guy that had the color coded threat level stuff. You guys remember that guy's name? What was his name? Oh God, that's who I think it's going to be next. What is that guy's name? Steve Quayle. Yeah, that's it. That's who I think is going to be next. I think they're going to see a Steve Quayle, Alex Jones knockdown brawl, because they have one every year, right? They have one every single year. There's always a new Patriot host knockdown drag out. I'm sure that's coming, and it always happens right after Jones has his little whatever his newest publicity op is. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to read from this JonesInfowars.com article about this V operation he's running now, his newest operation of the year, his newest PSYOP of the year, I should say. And then I'm going to give you some information pertaining to what I believe this is really about. And that's the most important part. The historical foundation for the V for victory symbol is firmly rooted in the stirring spirit of ordinary French people who risked deportation, concentration camps, and death in merely expressing their symbolic resistance to being occupied by Nazis during World War II. After the Nazi occupation of France, Victor Auguste de Lavallee, a former Belgian Minister of Justice and director of the Belgian French-speaking broadcast on the BBC, picked up on the V's that were already being scrawled all over Paris by frustrated French citizens demonstrating their opposition to the new slave masters and devised a massive Allied propaganda campaign that would use the V symbol against the Nazis as an act of psychological warfare. Oh, so you're just admitted you're going to use it. So I guess that Jones is admitting now he's going to use a V for reverse psychological warfare. Okay. Which is classic for him because that's exactly what he always does. He takes the tactics and motives that the New World Order uses and then uses that in his operation and uses that against other Patriot networks and hosts and whatever have you. Didn't think we'd pick up on that, Mr. Jones? Now, this is where it starts to get, your bullshit detector will start to go off heavy. The V symbol was then adapted by Churchill in his familiar hand salutes and subsequently broadcast in the form of Morse code to French listeners of Radio Londres. I can't even read this horse shit. Look, number one, you fucking retard. Jones and fucking, what's it, the other, your limey fucking MI6 bastard, Paul Joseph Watson. Number one, Churchill was a member of the Order of Druids. He was also a member of these bloodline families and Freemasons. His grandfather, his father was involved in his goddamn father was Jack the Ripper, for God's sakes. Let's not pull any punches here. Churchill's father was not just involved in the goddamn Jack the Ripper murders. He was Jack the Ripper. The V hand symbol, my goodness gracious, saying this is good and, oh, Churchill used it. There's nothing in here in any way, shape, or form where Alex Jones will expose the true meaning of what this symbol is. Where did Winston Churchill learn of this V sign? Well, Churchill was a Freemason. What's the name of that book that Stephen Knight wrote and they killed him about it? The Brotherhood? He talks about that in there. Now, they killed him for writing that book. And the whole V symbol is the Roman symbol for the number 5. And guess who also used the V symbol and the V hand symbol? Adam Weishaupt and the Illuminati. How many times have we talked about the connection with the Alumbrados cult and the Jesuits and the connections to the origins of the Illuminati? You see these connections now? Very interesting with all these connections we already know about this to Alex Jones. We'd find him using this symbol, don't you? The law of fives. It's as Illuminati as you can get. It's also Kabbalistic as well. The Hebrew letter for V or van is nail or now. The nail is one of the secret titles of Satan, Lucifer, the Dark Lord, Jabulon, whatever, within the secret societies. They call him the nail. That's essentially what that symbol is. It's basically hailing Lucifer or the dark energy or whatever have you. I mean, whatever appellation you want to apply to, it's up to you. But that's essentially what that symbol has always meant. But again, the connection to 5 and V being the Roman numeral 5, it makes you wonder if there's some sort of connection to the number 5 that we should be looking for in all this. Is 5 a code number to how many months it's going to be before Civil War breaks out? Is 5 a code to when the end of the world's going to take place? Didn't those the goofy cults and all that say the end of the world was going to end in May? That's 5, right? That's the 5th month, right? Maybe there's something like that coded in there. But the real point of the matter is that nowhere in this article does Jones point out the occult significance, and especially the connection with Churchill and the Freemasons and the Illuminati, the Order of Druids, any of this stuff. Jones never he always acts as if it's just it's just a coincidence or a side note that he doesn't mention it. He'll go, well, this, that, or the other, and people say this connect, but he always seems to conveniently sidestep any important information, no matter what the topic may be, that connects this stuff back to the priest class, back to the secret societies, back to the bloodlines. That's another key interesting thing about this. You have Churchill of these bloodlines using this symbol. Jones and his connection to the bloodline people in the CMP. Just had Schlafly on last week. She's a bloodline, both sides of her family. We've talked about that. So my point here to all of this is that I don't see how we can write this off, or any of you out there can write this off, this use of Alex Jones and his newest publicity stunt of the year. If it's not Charlie Sheen and fake letters to the president, it's, getting people to wear Joker makeup and prance around like a bunch of fags, like Jones is. My whole thing is I don't see how we can ignore the connection to both secret societies, bloodlines, and all of this stuff that we've already connected Jones to, and its connection to him using this V sign in his latest thing. Well, that's not the same V sign though. On a journey in the chat room, that's not the same. We're talking about the peace sign. That's what Churchill used. That's the V for victory. That's the one that's represented in the V. We're not talking about the Vulcan symbol. That's something completely different. That's not the same at all. In fact, it's completely radically different. It doesn't have even the same meaning at all. Not remotely close. It's not the same thing. Let me make that crystal clear in case anybody in the chat room got confused by this input by our chatter. The Vulcan hand symbol of Spock and the Vulcans is in no way, shape, or form the same as what we're talking about right now. The point of our conversation in our subject, which is the V hand symbol that was used by Churchill and was used in the poster. Not the same thing. One more time, not the same thing. I saw an interview with Leonard Nimoy where he talked about where that came from. When he was a child, he was, Nimoy's Jewish. He was in the synagogue, and they had these Jewish mystics, Kabbalistic Jewish mystics that came in, and his father told him that he had to sit with his head down, and he weren't allowed to open. They all had to close their eyes, and they weren't allowed to see these men when they were in the synagogue. And Nimoy said, being a child, he'd opened his eyes, and when he opened his eyes, he saw the priests making the Vulcan hand sign, not the peace symbol, and they were going around basically putting it on the heads of everybody in the room, like doing magic with it. So it's two different things. Yes, there was a lot of predictive programming in the Star Trek shows, but what do you expect? It's admitted that all of the technology that was used in the Star Trek original series, from the tricoders to the phaser guns and all that stuff, was based on technology that the Nazis admittedly already had. In fact, Richard Hoagland, he's still butthurt and sore to this day because he was originally brought in to be the science advisor on the Star Trek series, but was summarily fired and replaced by one of Werner von Braun's paperclip Nazis. We literally had paperclip Nazis working as the science and technology advisors on that show. And combined with, of course, Gene Roddenberry being a 33rd degree Freemason and all the symbology and everything else. But there was a reason why they brought in paperclip Nazis on the original Star Trek series. And the reason that is because the Star Trek series was funded and put up as essentially a sale piece. It was how they sold the United States and the taxpayers on paying for the space program and the faked moon landings that were shown on TV much later. They said, well, that's what America wants. This is how we're going to fund the space program. So, what we'll do is we'll just film, a more realistic looking version of Star Trek with all their with their tax money. And then we'll do what we want to do and not show that to the public because of the extraterrestrials and the fact that we've just been completely lied to about everything when it comes to the moon. So yeah, I mean, there's a whole reason why Star Trek was full of stuff, because it was it was completely created for the intelligentsia. That's why they put two Jewish gentlemen. Think about that. How retarded that is, with Nazis working on the science advisor. And then what do they do is the two main lead strong male roles are played by Jewish actors, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. It's a big goddamn joke. It's so hilarious. Anyway, yeah, so the big thing everybody's been asking me about, Jones and his use of V things. I mean, look, we just need to call this out. We just need to put this out there and let everybody know that we know what this is. The connection with this, with the law of fives, and how that V sign was used with the law of fives and its connection to the Illuminati. And then those connections that we've found and talk about with the Jesuits and the Alumbrado Society, and the connection with the Jesuits to Alex Jones and the John Birch Society. This is, it's pretty amazing, because this is how arrogant these guys are getting. They really believe that their cash cow patriot truth movement is going so well, and that they've gotten so many people lulled into another false sense of security, that they can now throw these occultic symbols out there, and those of us who speak out about it they'll just relegate us to the fringe, and they'll just say, oh, those people aren't important. They don't care about freedom and liberty. Just worry about freedom and liberty, and worry about the Constitution, and use this V symbol in my operation. Don't worry about those naysayers over there. No. See, people have figured out that you think that they're stupid, and they're rebelling against that now. This is going to fall flat on its face. The only people that are going to do this are going to be dumb teenagers, or people who have an IQ of about 20, the same people that did the Joker makeup stuff. That's the people that are going to get roped into this. And yeah, they might get themselves a patsy out of it, or whatever have you. But, it's just more of the same. Absolutely more of the same. All right, well, we're going to take a break, come back, and all right, back here with you on the Global Reality, right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thank you for being with us. This Monday edition of the show, we got a lot more to talk about and get into with you here on the broadcast today. We're glad you could join us, and we will be discussing a ton more news, tons more different topics of discussion here on the broadcast today, and I hope you're having a good day. Hope you had a good weekend as well. And we are going to be getting back into more information. I want to mention one more thing that I'd forgotten to mention in the last segment. I was talking about the symbology of Alex Jones using the V symbol and how that ties into the occult and the Illuminati and the rest of it. It's also known as a symbol of wrath and destruction. So the use of this V symbol, to me, is pushing forward what we already know, which is trying to instigate armed conflict, trying to instigate and push towards a new civil war in this country. With all the information that I have, this is just a no-brainer to me. And it'll be a no-brainer to all the rest of you once we have the Secret Volume 2 out, because in the first segment of that film, it's a complete rundown on the Jesuit involvement in the first Civil War, the connections of the people that are involved in the Patriot movement, their connections to the Jesuits now, and how that's now being propagated and now trying to create. See what they want to do? They don't want to have to fix any of the problems that they've created up to this point. They're not going to fix the economy and the job force or anything else. You understand that, right? They're not going to do that. They are going to push this until people get to the point of breaking, and they have no choice but to lash out violently. This is what they're doing. The V sign as displayed by the hand has also been used by illuminists, and what it depicts is the chevron. Now, one of our listeners called in several weeks ago and asked if I would watch this documentary called what it was by Jose Vamilla, or I can't remember that guy's name. But it was a documentary on the moon, and one of our listeners had called in. Those of you guys might remember that, and asked me if I would watch this documentary, and I did watch it. And that was one of the things they talked about was the use of the chevron in almost every space program around the world, not to mention every, moon mission or every space mission the United States has ever done. But that V symbol, the chevron, has its own sort of meaning. When it's pointing downward, it becomes a V device, or a chevron has been adopted for the uniforms of military troops of some countries, resembling a downward pointing triangle with the top line open or omitted, symbolizes fiery destruction and wrath on to which the object is pointed. So it's interesting with the V pointing upwards, that would mean that the fiery destruction and wrath would be unleashed on those above, which I think is also interesting when you think about, shooting down things or shooting down extraterrestrials or UFOs, or this idea of the elite, who were cast out and whose ancestors were cast out, the Nephilim or whatever have you, the fallen angels being cast out of heaven, and how a lot of people believe that the technological aspect of CERN and trying to create wormholes and the recreating of the fiery furnace and these stargates and various things were referenced in ancient Mesopotamia, which would go a long way to explain why they felt the need to rape and pillage all the ancient antiquities over in ancient Mesopotamia, what is now Iraq. So to me, I see this also as a symbolizing of the war, the evil war that's going on against in the spiritual realms as well. Either way, I think that the tie of this symbol being a chevron, and the tie into that. Oh yeah, in Stargate, that's what they call them. They call them the chevrons. You're right. It's a V whenever it locks into the wow. And I was just talking about the Stargates and the rest of that. Well, you're exactly right. I just watched Stargate last week, the original. No, you're exactly right. I remember them saying that. When James Spader's trying to figure out what the symbols mean, and every time they figure one out, it locks in. And once they get all the chevrons locked in, the V's, then it locks into place, and then the Stargate opens up. Wow! Oh, well, that's amazing, because I was just saying, isn't it interesting that the V pointing up towards the heavens would if it's true what they say, and I'm reading this from a website where it says that depending on where the two straight lines are angled means essentially where the wrath and destruction and the fiery destruction are supposed to be pointing towards. And the idea of the bloodlines and the Nephilim and the fallen angels, and those being the same as the Anunnaki and being cast out from heaven and mating with the daughters of man and creating humans, and then those ones that were made with the purest DNA and kept their DNA pure through the years have been the ones that have been in positions of power, and then formed the priest class and the Illuminati and all the rest of these things. And this idea that people have that they are trying to open up wormholes with CERN so they can essentially storm the gates of quote unquote heaven, to be able to go use technology to go back in to wherever it was that they were cast out from. And that's so that correlation there with the chevron and the V in the movie Stargate is a hell of a connection. That's a hell of a connection. And Lee says that some books claim V is considered a sign of Apophis, the destroyer. Well, that ties into vengeance and destroyer and the rest of my goodness. It's just unbelievable. Sorry, I wanted to finish mentioning that, and we'll move on to some other topics of discussion. Boy, I mean, it's hard to look at any of this news, though. I just see the overarching theme in all of this news, as it always is death, destruction, doom, gloom, the end of the world, all of it. They really, really want us to really be believing that, and it's on one point it's hard not to believe it, because the Earth is going through some very interesting cataclysmic changes right now, the likes of which we've never seen. But again, these are cycles. These cycles have always happened on this planet, and they will always happen again. The whole thing about it is that we've lost our context and understanding of that through society and the media and the culture. We've lost sight of the fact that natural disasters and cycles on the planet that, are very well could be extinction level events that wipe out most of the life on this planet happen on a regular cycle basis. And I'm not even saying that the 2012 end of the world thing is true and going to happen. What I'm saying is, forget all that. I'm not talking about that at all. What I'm saying is that we have lost sight of the fact that cataclysmic changes happen on this planet. And things happen. There are extinction level events and things that happen that very well could mean the result of the wiping out of most of the people on the planet. But that doesn't mean that all life on Earth is going to end. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to get us to forget that these great cataclysmic changes happen, and then steer the perimeters towards us believing that these cataclysmic changes that happen cyclically and happen on a very distinct time period through the centuries and through the eons are a result of, non-believers being, smited by their Lord Jesus or God or Yahweh or fucking, Vishnu or Muhammad Ali or whoever. You know what I mean? That's the whole thing that they're doing now. They're taking these natural cyclic events that happen. They're not allowing us to understand the context of the time periods and the cycles in which these happen, which if we did, then you would have a lot more people and a lot less people on Earth that would be worrisome of this. If everybody knew that there were cyclical things that happened on this planet that, cause a lot of death and destruction, they happen, but then, it rights itself and then life continues on for a period of years, you'd have a lot less people concerned with the end of the world and obsessing over it. But you'd also have less of an ability to maintain society in the way that these elite want to maintain it. Because then when people would say, well, hey, everything's going to flip over and go crazy and a bunch of people are going to die in a few years, right? So why should we have to listen to what these politicians and people in charge tell us to do? You see, that's where this is coming from. So they're trying to essentially keep us from understanding and being okay with the fact that cyclical things happen on this planet. So then they can use that to justify pushing forward their religious agendas and their eugenics agendas. It's just sick and disgusting. But let's go through some of these. I think I got several of them. Let's go through some of these that pertain to the topic of great cataclysm and death and destruction, shall we? Let's see here what we have. Well, here's the first interesting one. Earth to get second sun as supernova turns night into day. And supposedly they're saying this is going to happen this year. The Earth could soon have a second sun, at least for a week or two. The cosmic phenomenon will happen when one of the brightest stars in the night sky explodes into a supernova, and according to a report yesterday, the most stunning light show in the planet's history could happen as soon as this year. Earth will undoubtedly have a front row seat when the dying red supergiant Betelgeuse finally blows itself into oblivion. Isn't that interesting? Well, I'm sure that doesn't have any sort of occult meaning to it or anything else, does it? I mean, we're here now. This is really happening. How does it feel to be right in the middle of galactic alignment and this whole thing happening? It feels awesome to me. I'm not worried about any of this stuff in the least bit. The explosion will be so bright that even though the star in the Orion constellation is 640 light years away, it will still turn night into day and appear that there are two suns in the sky for 2 weeks. So we're going to have basically 2 weeks worth of pure daytime and no nighttime. Well, that's going to fuck with some heads. It's going to be like a 2-week long acid trip. Holy shit. The only real debate is over exactly when it will happen. In stellar terms, Betelgeuse is predicted to crash and burn in the very near future, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to rush out and buy sunglasses. Brad Carter, senior lecturer of physics at the University of Southern Queensland in Australia, claimed yesterday that the galactic blast could happen before 2012 or any time over the next million years. Well, that's kind of a big it could happen before 2012. It could happen this year, but also it could happen anytime in the next million years. Well, that's a bit odd. The old star is running out of fuel in its center. This fuel keeps Betelgeuse shining and supported. When this fuel runs out, the star will literally collapse in upon itself, and it will do so very quickly. This is the final hurrah for the star. It goes bang, it explodes, it lights up, and will have incredible brightness for a brief period of time, for a couple of weeks, and then over the coming months, it begins to fade, and then eventually it'll be very hard to see it all. The internet is abuzz with doomsday theories linking the supernova to the Mayan calendar's prediction of an Armageddon in 2012, fueled by the association of the word Betelgeuse with the devil. But experts claim that even if the Big Bang is looming, it will still happen way too far from Earth to do us any harm. When a star goes bang, the first we observe of its rain of tiny particles called neutrinos. They will usually flood through the Earth, and bizarrely enough, even though the supernova we see visually will light up the night sky, 99% of the energy in the supernova is released in these particles that will come through our bodies and through the Earth with absolutely no harm whatsoever. When it happens, the Betelgeuse supernova will almost certainly be the most dramatic ever seen. It is the ninth brightest star in the night sky and the second brightest in the constellation of Orion, outshining its neighbor Regal, or Beta Orionis, only very rarely. Its distinct orange-red color makes it easy to spot in the night sky. If it was at the center of our solar system, its surface would extend past the asteroid belt, wholly engulfing Mercury, Venus, Mars, and the Earth. So there you go. So there's one. There's one under the heading of doom and destruction. Here's another one: violent seismic activity tearing Africa in two. This is from Der Spiegel. The fissures began appearing 2 years ago, but in recent months, seismic activity has accelerated in northeastern Africa as the continent breaks apart in slow motion. Researchers say that lava in the region is consistent with magma normally seen on the seafloor, and that water will ultimately cover the desert. Cynthia Ebbinger, a geologist from the University of Rochester, New York, could hardly believe what the caller from the deserts of Ethiopia was saying. It was an employee at a mineralogy company, and he reported that the famous Erta El volcano in northeastern Ethiopia was erupting. Ebbinger, who has always studied the volcano, was taken aback. The volcano's crater has always been filled with a bubbling super silver black lava, but it had been decades since its last eruption. The call came last November, and Ebbinger immediately flew to Ethiopia with some fellow researchers. The volcano was bubbling over. Flaming red lava was shooting up into the sky. The Earth is in upheaval in northeastern Africa, and the region is changing quickly. The desert floor is quaking and splitting open. Volcanoes are boiling over, and seawaters are encroaching upon the land. Africa, researchers are certain, is splitting apart at a rate rarely seen in geology. The first fracture appeared millions of years ago, resulting in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. The second fracture, stretching south from Ethiopia to Mozambique, is known as the Great Rift Valley, and it is lined with several volcanoes. Millions of years from now, it too will be filled with seawater. For now, no one can really say when the sea will finally flood the desert, but when it does, it could go quickly. The hills could sink in a matter of days, a fellow researcher at the University of Leeds School of Earth and Environment said at a recent conference hosted by American Geophysical Union in San Francisco. And now they're saying that a big massive super flood or something is going to happen in California. They pretty much completely quit talking about the earthquake because it looks like they're probably going to mitigate that, move the big one over to the New Madrid fault, and then of course with this happening, so all of this news, it's just amazing how it's all being, it's all going towards this idea that we've got doom and gloom coming. And I don't know if you guys heard about this. A couple of weeks ago, the whole internet was a buzz, and I was getting all these goddamn messages about people were freaking out about the whole new Zodiac thing. And the connection with the new symbol and Ophiuchus and all this stuff. Well, it's interesting. According to some people who got the new Kindle readers for Christmas, you know what I'm talking about, right? Kindle, the the little PDF reader, book reader, digital book reader things. Well, apparently the Kindle comes loaded with 22 screensaver images that run on a cycle, and some people are believing this is a strange bit of predictive programming, but one of the symbols that comes loaded in the Kindles, and people were getting these for Christmas prior to this story being rolled out about Ophiuchus and all this stuff a few weeks ago, that lo and behold, the new Kindles come loaded with a screensaver of Ophiuchus. This is what the Minnesota Planetarium Society is now saying that we need to incorporate into, because and also people are saying that that when the birds were dying off several weeks ago, that was a pole shift, and that the pole shift happened and the Earth's poles have already flipped. Which I don't know how they would be saying that. But anyway, the point of the matter is that they were already putting this symbology of Ophiuchus into these readers, into these Kindle readers, before they were coming out with this big story about it. Almost as if they were trying to program people's subconscious to the symbology of this. And I think it does go a long way towards the idea of what we already knew, which was this whole thing of it was put out there as an operation to confuse people, to shift energies around. But it's just amazing. People were saying that I said that probably that was a sign that there was going to be a pole shift happening. But there are some people that are saying that they're saying undoubtedly, a pole shift happened a couple weeks ago. Well, no, it didn't. I think we would have seen a lot more damage than this had a pole shift happened. My goodness. Let's go through the rest of this stuff here. Let's see what else kind of doom and gloom we have. Let's see if I have any that fall under the guise of doom and gloom. Just kind of going through my my stack here. Well, I guess this. Oh, here we go. Yellowstone has bulged as magma pockets swell. Here's another indicator. Some places saw the ground rise by 10 inches, they report. Yellowstone National Park supervolcano just took a deep breath, causing miles of ground to rise dramatically, scientists report. The simmering volcano has produced major eruptions, each 1,000 times more powerful than Mount St. Helens' 1980 eruption, 3 times in the past 2.1 million years. Yellowstone's caldera, which covers a 25 by 37 mile swath of Wyoming, is an ancient crater formed after the last big blast some 640,000 years ago. Since then, about 30 smaller eruptions, including one as recent as 70,000 years ago, have filled the caldera with lava and ash, producing the relatively flat landscape that we see today. But beginning in 2004, scientists saw the ground above the caldera rise upward at rates as high as 2.8 inches and 2.8 inches a year. The rate slowed between 2007 and 2010 to a centimeter a year or less. Still, since the start of the swelling, ground levels over the volcano have been raised by as much as 10 inches in places. It's an extraordinary uplift because it covers such a large area and the rates are so high, said the University of Utah's Bob Smith, a long-term expert in Yellowstone's volcanism. Scientists think a swelling magma reservoir 4 to 6 miles below the surface is driving the uplift. Fortunately, the surge doesn't seem to herald an imminent catastrophe. Well, that's interesting. Doesn't seem to herald an imminent catastrophe. I remember reading news stories back in 2008, 2009 from scientific journals where they were saying that there was they were saying there were fears that Yellowstone could blow any day and cause, a nuclear style explosion in the United States. They were really hyping that a few years ago. So let me get this straight. So all of a sudden, they're coming out and saying there's not any signs of an imminent catastrophe. Well, then why report on this story here? This is National Geographic on Yellowstone bulging in magma pocket swells. Okay, great. So Yellowstone has bulged and magma pockets are swelling at Yellowstone. Okay, great. Who cares? So what? If it doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't mean that there's an imminent catastrophe going to happen, as they were saying a couple of years ago, and really pumping out and saying, oh, yeah, it's, a big one's going to happen, blah, 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 could kill millions of people. And now they say in this article, oh, no, don't worry, nothing like that's going to happen. Again, take anything these fuckers say to you and just reverse it, and then you get your truth. Now I'm worried something is going to happen at Yellowstone. And they're saying, oh, it's not, don't worry. After a couple of years ago, they were saying, oh, yeah, something is going to happen. But again, so what's the point of this article? What's the point? If it means nothing and it's of no significance and there isn't going to be any event, any catastrophic event at Yellowstone, then why spend the money and spend the time reporting this story? You see, lies, absolute lies. So let's get you all worked up and let's get you all scared about shit that you shouldn't be worked up and scared about. And then the things that are a real threat, we're either just not going to report on, underreport, or we're going to report on them and say, you don't have anything to worry about. Unbelievable, this stuff. Let's continue on with the doom and gloom of the news today, shall we? President Barack Obama announced Friday that General Electric Chairman and CEO Jeffrey Immelt will chair the President's Council on Jobs and Competitiveness. Oh, man. Boy, let's let the inmates run the motherfucking insane asylum some more, shall we? So let me get this straight. You're going to put the guy who's in the head of General Electric, one of the biggest military industrial complex companies in the world. Obama says, yeah, oh, I'm going to put this guy in head of, in charge of finding the Council on Jobs and Competitiveness. Now, I'm not generally a betting man, but I'll bet you $1. I got a pretty good idea about where the job sector is. This guy's going to tell us it lies. I don't know. Anybody else got a guess? I don't know, maybe military industrial complex, weapons manufacturing. I mean, my God, you're telling me that Obama puts the head of General Electric in charge of our President's Council on Jobs and Competitiveness? I mean, you got to laugh at it. You got to laugh at it. I mean, yeah, again, give you one guess. Where do you think this guy's going to tell us jobs are going to come from? This guy makes money the more wars and deaths and destruction and everything else that are going on. So, of course, he's going to think that it's in his best interest and in the best interest of the quote-unquote job community. Of course, he's going to think about he's going to say that the importance of jobs lies in the military industrial complex and making weapons of war and the rest of this stuff. Not to mention this guy's connection. I mean, this guy's got connections to everybody. Melt, I mean, you do a fucking Google search on that guy. He's connected to the Federal Reserve Board. He's connected to the Rockefellers. He's connected to the CFR, I think. He's connected to everybody. And it's gracious. And then, of course, every time they need some good scaremongering, every time they really need to have some real fear-mongering, well, who do they roll out? Oh, do you know who they roll out? They roll out me. I am Hans Kissinger. I come to scare you some more. Big skinny worm I'm going to put in your mouth on. Where's the lotion, bitch? So we've got some economic scaremongering news for you here today as well. Let's get into that now. China may revalue its currency this year. I'm just going to, every time I do the news now, I'm going to make sure I tell you beforehand what we're talking about is scaremongering stuff. China could act on revaluing its currency over the course of the year without admitting defeat in their battle with the international community over its values, said U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. Former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. In an interview with CNN, Kissinger, who worked to open U.S. relations with China 40 years ago, said he would be disappointed if China did not make such a move on the yuan if it can be done in a way where it does not look like a Chinese defeat. In other words, if they don't have to step up to a rostrum and say, we have agreed to move the currency, I believe they now understand a way it might be done with some mutual concessions. Right. But again, what old Hines is not talking about right there, and not bringing up in that article is this. This comes from the London Telegraph. UN wants new global currency to replace dollar. Imagine that. How many times we've been hearing about this? It's unbelievable. China bank moves to buy U.S. branches. China's biggest bank signed an agreement that would make it the first Beijing-controlled financial institution to acquire retail bank branches in the U.S. through regulators could still block the deal. You know, it blows my mind, man. It blows my mind the more that you find out that, you know, for all the threat of communism and, we ended the Cold War and Cold War is over and the commies were the threat, but the Cold War is over. Has anybody else but me noticed that the communists won and are really hold the power in the world and are really running everything now? I know that they've done a damn good job at not getting us all to realize that, but it's absolutely true. The Cold War, the war on communism, was an absolute failure by design because the powers that be used this scaremongering and this ideology of communism as an excuse to commit genocide and wipe out more people and then allow their communist system to take over control. Communism didn't get defeated. It didn't end. It took over. This is exactly what they're doing now. Nationalizing banks, nationalizing all these industries, allowing China to come in and buy up banks. And then what happens? You switch the currency around, you switch the value around, and then guess who owns everything? Well, whoever's currency is worth the most once the devaluation continues and this equilibrium occurs where they create this new currency. Whoever owns the most of the previous assets is going to have the biggest say. Whoever has the most debt is going to have the least amount of say. It's insane. Man, oh man, speaking of insane, we've got insane amounts of more news and information to get into here today for you on the show. We're going to be getting into more news, more stuff here, lots of different topics. You can always email me, globalrealityshow@gmail.com. And I haven't asked you today, but please support us if you can. If you want to help, if you want to see the Cigarette Volume 2 get out and you want us to be able to finish this, then, we need cash. If you want to help us take this on, we need cash. We need donations. We need it. So please go use the donate button. Don't use the chip and banner for anything except for the bills. The chip and banner's there for the bills and everything else. Please use that as well. And, because again, I had somebody a couple weeks ago say they were sending, X amount of dollars, and I thought we were going to have this done. And then that never materialized, and they essentially lied to me and got my hopes up about it. And so now it's put us about 3 weeks behind because of that being told that 3 weeks ago. So now we're 3 weeks further, and I'm starting to think that this is an operation where people are saying, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to donate this much more, and then I think I've got it done, and then I'm behind, and then that puts the film coming out slower. I'm starting to think this is a part of the grander operation, honestly. And I try not to get up here and be frustrated about it. Back here with you on the Global Reality, right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thank you for being with us. It is Monday, yes, indeed. Monday, January the 24th, 2011. Glad you could be with us, and we are going to be getting into more news and information here today. If you have topics of discussion, things you'd like to ask me, globalrealityshow@gmail.com. That's globalrealityshow@gmail.com. You can email me there if you would like to ask a question or have me address something on the show. That's how you can do it. globalrealityshow@gmail.com. Let's continue on. I've got tons of stuff here. Tons of being built up. Various news stories I want to get into with you here. I'm going to get through all of this news today so I can have all this cleared off my plate and be done with it and not have any left over for tomorrow. It's from PCWorld.com. DNA molecules can teleport. Nobel winner says. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that another piece of evidence along the lines of what we already know, which is that everything in material reality is an illusion? A Nobel Prize winning biologist has ignited controversy after publishing details of an experiment in which a fragment of DNA appeared to teleport or imprint itself between test tubes. According to a team headed by Luc Montagnier, previously known for his work on HIV and AIDS, two test tubes, one of which contained a tiny piece of bacterial DNA, the other pure water, was surrounded by a weak electromagnetic field of 7 hertz. 18 hours later, after DNA amplification using a polymerase chain reaction, as if by magic, love how they say that, as if by magic, the DNA was detectable in the test tube containing pure water. Oddly, the original DNA sample had to be diluted many times over for the experiment to work, which might explain why the phenomenon has not been detected before, assuming that this is what has happened. The phenomenon might be very loosely described as teleportation, except that the bases project or imprint themselves across. The bases project or imprint themselves across space rather than simply moving from one place to another. To be on the safe side, Montagnier then compared the results with controls in which the time limit was lowered, no electromagnetic field was present, but at lower frequencies, in which both tubes contained pure water. On every one of these, he drew a blank. The quantum effect, the imprinting of the DNA on the water, is not in itself the most contentious element of the experiment, so much as the relatively long time scales over which it appears to manifest itself. Quantum phenomena are assumed to show their faces in imperceptible fractions of a second, and not seconds, minutes, and hours, and usually at very low temperatures approaching absolute zero, revealing a process through which biology might display the underlying quantumness of nature at room temperature would be startling. Montagier's experiment will have to be repeated by others to have any hope of being taken seriously. So far, some scientists have been publicly incredulous. What does it all mean? It could be that the propagation of life is able to make use of the quantum nature of reality to project itself in subtle ways, as has been hinted in previous experiments. Alternatively, it could be that life itself is a complex projection of these quantum phenomena and utterly depends on them in ways not yet understood because they are incredibly hard to detect. It could also be the little understood quantum properties of the water molecule and not just the obvious chemical bonding properties that give it such a central role in the bioengineering of life forms. Water might be a good medium in which DNA can copy itself using processes that hint at quantum entanglement and teleportation. So that's pretty interesting. That's a pretty interesting thing. They're starting to see more and more. Just like when they get inside, down to the subatomic level, when they get inside of an atom, they find out it's hollow. There's nothing inside of it. That's because the manifestation of material reality happens in the unconscious states of mind first. It happens in the unconscious, untangible, unmaterial realms. Everything in material reality is, for lack of a better term, the result of what initiated and started out as pure thought or an idea or energy. And that idea and that energy and that thought of the imagination then transforms it into material reality. That's what science is now proving, what the esoterics have known for centuries. So let's continue on here with more news. Speaking of that, while we're on the sort of the subject of the esoteric, this is interesting, and another thing that people who have been into the the Eastern philosophies and things like this that they've known for years. I mean, it's amazing. The Tibetan Book of the Dead talks about the time in which the soul can re-inhabit back down into a physical body on Earth. And it talked about this time period, and now modern science has showed us that this time period relates to the exact same moment that you have a massive flood of dimethyltryptamine, DMT, in the fetus the unborn fetus, which also happens at the exact time when you can determine whether the child is male or female. So this next story really also pertains to that sort of thing, with that, the esoterics and mystics and whatnot have known for decades. Mindfulness meditation training changes brain structure in 8 weeks. Participating in an 8-week mindfulness meditation program appears to make measurable changes in brain regions associated with memory, sense of self, empathy, and in stress. In a study that will appear in the January 30th issue of Psychiatry Research, Neuroimaging, a team led by Massachusetts General Hospital researchers report the results of their study, the first to document meditation-produced changes over time in the brain's gray matter. Although the practice of meditation is associated with a sense of peacefulness and physical relaxation, practitioners have long claimed that meditation also provides cognitive and psychological benefits that persist throughout their day. This study demonstrates that changes in brain structure may underlie some of these reported improvements, and that people are not just feeling better because they are spending time relaxing. Previous studies from Lazar's group and others found structural differences between the brains of experienced meditation practitioners and individuals with no history of meditation, observing thickening of the cerebral cortex in areas associated with attention and emotional integration. But those investigations could not document that those differences were actually produced by meditation. For the current study, MR images were taken of the brain structure of 16 study participants 2 weeks before and after they took part in the 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction program at the University of Massachusetts Center for Mindfulness. In addition to weekly meetings that included practice of mindful meditation, which focuses on non-judgmental awareness of sensations, feelings, and states of mind, participants received audio recordings for guided meditation practice and were asked to keep track of how much time they practiced each day. A set of MR brain images were also taken of a control group of non-meditators over a similar time interval. Meditation group participants reported spending an average of 27 minutes each day practicing mindfulness exercises, and their responses to a mindfulness questionnaire indicated significant improvements compared with pre-participation responses. The analysis of MR images, which focused on the areas where meditation-associated differences were seen in earlier studies, found increased gray matter density in the hippocampus, known to be important for learning and memory, and in structures associated with self-awareness, compassion, and introspection. Participant reported reductions in stress were also correlated with decreased gray matter density in the amygdala, which is also known to play an important role in anxiety and stress, although no change were seen in a self-awareness associated structure called the insula, which had been identified in earlier studies. The author suggests that longer-term meditation practice might be needed to produce changes in that area. None of these changes were seen in the control group, indicating they had not resulted merely from the passage of time. So again, another one of those very interesting things that the Science Daily there that ties into, again, things that has been known, that people on this planet have known about for a great amount of time. And, this ultimately to me is one of the big things where it's going to make or break us as a species. Either we're going to come into these ancient practices that have been known for thousands of years and really start to learn and figure out how relevant they are to us in this day and age, even though we're told that they're irrelevant, but because now we have technology and we have the medical industrial complex and we have, pharmaceuticals and we have all this other stuff. So these things are irrelevant. Well, it's just absolutely not true. And now science is catching up to what the mystics have known for thousands of years. And now these things are starting to become real and realized as being as real as they are. And this is going to be the make or break thing where, do we learn how to incorporate these things into making our lives better, or do we just continue to relegate them to the fringe and take what the medical industrial complex sells us and take their medicines and take all their sick, disgusting depravity that makes us sick, not makes us better? let's continue to see what else we have here. Oh, I meant to talk about this earlier. I've forgotten about this. Did you guys hear that? Yeah, I guess now General McChrystal has denied. It says retired General Stanley McChrystal says he is not a part of a religious order waging war on Islam, despite recent assertions by acclaimed journalist Seymour Hersh. Speaking in Qatar earlier this week, Hersh claimed that McChrystal and current members of the Special Operations Community are members of the Knights of Malta and Opus Dei, both Catholic organizations, according to blog Foreign Policy. But so McChrystal has come out and denied this now. That's funny. (9/11) Museum bigs cash in. School children thought that their penny jars and bake sale proceeds would go towards building a 9/11 memorial at Ground Zero, not the six-figure salaries of nonprofit execs. But 11 staffers at the National September 11th Memorial and Museum each pulled down more than $170,000 in total compensation in 2009. According to the most recent filings, 4 executives took home more than $320,000. Foundation President Joseph Daniels, 38, pocketed $371,000 after receiving hefty raises 3 years in a row, 28% in 2006, and he was promoted for acting president, followed by 12% and 6%. Well, look, you got to understand, this is a necessary thing. There, now, wait for the audience to gasp. Oh my God, how could Josh say this is a necessary thing? What's a necessary thing? It's necessary that these guys that are working for the 9/11 Museum get paid exorbitant amounts of money, $370,000, blah, 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 this, that, and the other to work at this museum. It's important that, school children's pennies and bake sales go to pay for this so the taxpayers don't have to pay for it. No, this is important because if these people didn't get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to work for a museum that hasn't even opened yet and get these huge paychecks, if this wasn't going on, then, you might have some of these people who work in this museum who are looking at some of the artifacts and the various things from September 11th that might go, wait a minute. There's no way jet fuel did that. But, when you keep them, working for a 9/11 museum that hasn't even opened yet, that's still, being built and put together, and you got them working on, you pay them big salaries, well, then you can say, okay, we're going to pay you this big salary for doing nothing. And you just make sure you keep your goddamn mouth shut about anything you think you might see suspicious. And by the way, we're going to make you sign a confidentiality agreement and make sure that when you're not in our employ anymore, you can't say anything about it. Of course, yeah, I was being sarcastic there, but no. This is absolutely unbelievable. And I don't think that there's any doubt that's what this is. They're paying these guys to keep their mouths shut because you can't tell me, if they're actually, getting to see actual 9/11, artifacts and all this stuff, that somebody in there isn't going to, make say, oh, well, hey, what about that? Bent steel and all this crap. But this is what we do in America. We create catastrophes. We create the disaster economy. And then we create a new economy based around the tourism revolving around those events. I'm probably about positive that at some point, I think probably once we annex Cuba into the United States and just go full-blown commie socialist pinko, that in order to help Cuba, well, it could be Haiti too. Either Cuba or Haiti, I'm thinking, probably where this is going to happen. I think they're going to open up the United States History of False Flags theme park. And they'll just turn the whole goddamn island, either of Haiti or Cuba, into a gigantic theme park. Wouldn't that be awesome? You get to ride through the, in the limo and make that big turn on at Houston and Elm and come around the corner and the JFK brains blown out by multiple shooter simulation ride, stand in the in the owl's nest and take aim at Kennedy with your piece of shit Mannlicher Carcano and see if you can do it. And hey, if you can actually blow Kennedy's brains out with that shitty gun, then we'll give you a free week at the hotel in the theme park. That'd be great with the Twin Tower ride where, you know, they have a big simulation of the Twin Towers and you get to see what it's like to fall from, you know, 110 stories when you're see and experience what it feels like when your body slams into concrete and turns to liquid instantly. Let's have the we'll have all sorts of that stuff. We'll have the Katrina riots ride. Well, you'll get to go in and, you know, shoot people with you'll get to dress up as a cop and shoot people with guns and break 40s over people's heads and shit. That'd be great. I'm sure that's coming. You know, I think I'm probably one of the few people in Dallas that even has takes offense to the fact that the book depository building in Dealey Plaza is called the Assassination Museum. You couldn't call it something else other than that. You had to call it the Assassination Museum. Why not call it the John F. Kennedy Memorial Museum or something? Why call it the Assassination Museum? You know, when you call it the Assassination Museum, it takes the human element out of it, doesn't it? This is assassination. No, assassination of who? You know, 100 years from now, people are going to go, well, okay, so what? They assassinated Kennedy. Who cares? What does it matter? That was 100 years ago. People even are that way now. They think today it doesn't matter when it fully matters and it still plays into everything we're experiencing in our day and age. You know, create a tragedy, make a museum around it, and then we can just fucking milk fucking dollars out of it until the cows come home forever and ever and ever and play on the tragedy and act like we cared about it and act like we weren't the ones that perpetrated it when we were. Unbelievable. Did you guys hear? Apparently there's like a lot of weird stuff going on now with the Obama birth certificate issue again. A lot has come out. More information has come out on this whole the whole issue of Obama's birth certificate, and they're saying now Hawaii has now said that they will not release any information pertaining to his birth certificate. It seems to me that they're moving this operation back around again. WorldNet Daily's been running stories on it incessantly. They're moving this back around again, and I see an interesting scenario possibly playing out. It seems that they're saying, Hawaii, actually, there was a CBS News or ABC News article about Hawaii will not release any information about the birth certificate. They won't confirm whether it's real or fake or anything else. It's starting to become a big issue again. A privacy law that shields birth certificates has prompted Democratic Governor Neil Abercrombie to abandon efforts to dispel claims that Barack Obama was born outside Hawaii. State Attorney General David Louie told the governor that privacy laws bar him from disclosing an individual's birth documentation without the person's consent. There's nothing more that Governor Abercrombie can do within the law to produce a document. Now, the interesting about that is that I'm wondering if it may be possible that they are going to come out with this whole birth certificate thing before it's over. And I've been saying that for the very beginning, from day one when Obama was elected. And, I'm just wondering here if that's indeed what they're going to do. I mean, because it's very possible they could do one of two things. They could either come out and say, well, Obama did this and he did that and he did a good job and America liked him and blah, blah, whatever. So, hey, it doesn't really matter. We've proven now that it doesn't really matter where you're born or at or whatever. You can still be president. So let's change the Constitution and change the law. And then, by the way, we'll be able to get the Fuhrer in there if we do that, because you're going to have the Fuhrer before it's over with. You understand that, right? We're going to have Arnold Schwarzenegger as a president before it's over with. It's going to come true. We got to have the Fuhrer because he said he wants to be Fuhrer and he wants to be the fucking dictator and all this stuff. But I'm also thinking the other scenario concerning this birth certificate issue could very well be that they're going to basically say Obama's going to be a one-termer. they're going to come out and say, yes, it's true. He was not born in the United States. He was born in Kenya. And then they're going to say, okay, Obama is impeached. And then what happens? Well, everything that happened under the Obama administration, every law that he passed, everything that got us being sold out whole cloth to the bankers even more, our currency being devalued, they could essentially say, okay, he wasn't born in America. We're going to strike his whole presidency from the historical record. We're going to act like it never happened. Now we're going to basically pick up where he left off and have a new president, blah, 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 whatever. Well, don't you understand that all those things still would have taken place? And I think that's what they're going to do. I think that's how they're going to buy themselves more time. I think that's how they're going to give themselves basically like a 4-year window. You know, they could come out and say, well, here it is, you know, okay, he wasn't born in Kenya, so now he can't be president, blah, blah. Everything that happened under him, well, we basically got to start all over. But still, we had our currency devalued. We had our jobs go through the toilet. We had our deficit go up. So we'd still be under the effects of the things that happened to him. They could just say, well, you know, same thing that happened, you know, when Bush, it took 8 years to dig us out from what Bush did. And it'll take longer than that. It'll take us 1,000 years to dig out of that. Well, and now we got to clean up what this Obama character did, blah, blah, blah. You see? Any one of those could be a very plausible operation they may run with this. I think there's something coming. Who knows what it means? They may just, you know, they may just JFK his ass and be done with it. And then they'd get civil war and all the rest of this stuff. Somebody sent me an email and I said, do I know about Max Egan? I don't know anything about Max Egan other than the stuff that I've heard about him, and I've seen some of his stuff, and he just appears to me to be another patriot. Line towing clown. I don't know. Do you think this guy's controlled opposition, or he just keeps bad company, like interviewing Lynn Horowitz, appearing on GCN? You know, I don't know. I get the impression from him, from what the guy doesn't talk about. He doesn't talk about the CMP, he doesn't talk about the Jesuits, he doesn't talk about the priest class. He toes that line, that patriot line of what's acceptable. And I think that there's a million guys out there like him that do that. There are a lot of these guys out there. Oh, yeah, here's another one. The Republican leadership isn't doing much to discourage members of their party who believe President Barack Obama wasn't born in the U.S. House Majority Leader Eric Cantor became the latest GOP leader Sunday to refuse to denounce the birthers. There is a leadership moment here. There are elements of this country who question the president's citizenship, who think that his birth certificate is inauthentic. Will you call that what it is, which is crazy talk? David, I don't think it's nice to call anyone crazy, okay? I don't think that it's an issue that we need to address at all. Well, why won't you call it for what it is? Because I feel like there are a lot of Republican leaders who don't want to go as far to criticize those who think their president is not a citizen of the United States. So that's interesting. They try to pin Cantor down to get him to denounce it altogether. Same thing they did to Ron Paul. They got Ron Paul down and tried to get him to denounce that. Then and then I don't have anything to do with those people. Believe 9/11 was an inside job. I don't believe that. Yeah, right. I had heard, a year before fucking Ron Paul was saying that shit on the national debates, I had heard him on the Alex Jones show saying that he thought we needed a new investigation and blah, blah, blah. And he figured the government was lying to us about it. And then he turns around when he gets on TV. I mean, my God, don't trust these fucking politicians one iota. That's your first fucking tip. That's the biggest problem. People still putting their faith in other people instead of in themselves. That's the problem to all this. Let's see here. What else do we have on the news variety tonight? They're getting ready to lock down my city into a total fucking police state in the next couple of weeks. Oh, I can't wait for that. I need to go on a road trip or something that weekend. I don't know. I don't want to be around here for this fucking police state. I got to figure something out because I don't want to be here that weekend. I just don't. 2 years of planning have produced a comprehensive plan for North Texas Super Bowl security, officials said on Friday. The plan is intended to safeguard locations around the region where an estimated 200,000 visitors join local residents at hundreds of events during the week of February the 6th, the Super Bowl. Officials with a dozen federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies demonstrated parts of the plan Friday in an Arlington parking lot near Cowboy Stadium where the game will be played. Not one agency, not one city could do this alone, so it takes an incredible amount of planning and coordination. Arlington police have acquired some new equipment with Homeland Security grants, including unmanned helicopters to watch over the stadium site. Unmanned helicopters. Wow. First I've ever heard of those being deployed around here. Deputy Arlington Police Chief Loretta Hill said will be the commander for the stadium operations the day of the game. When we go operational, we know we have all these other tools and partnerships that are available to us. Bomb-grabbing robots were on display from several agencies, including Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Mounted officers from the Dallas Police Department participated in the Arlington demonstration, although they were likely to stay busy in Dallas. Most of our work, I think, will be dealing with the crowds, large number of people in the downtown area. Officials with the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms said the number of bomb-sniffing dogs working Cowboy Stadium prior to the game is expected to set a new Super Bowl record because the place is so big. Several officers at the demonstration said the Super Bowl security planning has generated a higher level of cooperation between law enforcement agencies. Yeah, I mean, they're just they're ramping it up, getting ready to turn this place into a total police state that weekend. I can't wait. I'm so excited. Oh, Jesus. But hey, at least Obama's not coming here now. Goddamn Bears lost. Italian scientists claim that they have demonstrated cold fusion. Well, cold fusion's been on the shelf for years. Few areas of science are more controversial than cold fusion, the hypothetical near room temperature reaction in which two smaller nuclei join together to form a single larger nucleus while releasing large amounts of energy. In the 1980s, Stanley Pons and Martin Fleischmann claimed to have demonstrated cold fusion, which could potentially provide the world with a cheap, clean energy source. But their experiment could not be reproduced. Since then, all other claims of cold fusion have been illegitimate, and studies have shown that cold fusion is theoretically implausible. No, it's been on the shelf for years. What's implausible is that the people who control the fossil fuel world will ever want to give up their supremacy that is controlled solely by their ownership and control of oil and gas fossil fuels. I love using that term because it's such a misnomer. It's a ridiculous misnomer. I just use it because they use it. I don't use it because I mean that's what it is. Let me be clear about that. Fossil fuels. So fucking funny. Despite the intense skepticism, I'm sorry, fossil fuels is funny. Despite the intense skepticism, a small community of scientists is still investigating near-room temperature fusion reactions. The latest news occurred last week when Italian scientists Andrea Rossi and Sergio Ficcardi of the University of Bologna announced that they developed a cold fusion device capable of producing 12,400 watts of heat power with an input of just 400 watts. Last Friday, the scientists held a private invitation press conference in Bologna and attended by about 50 people, where they demonstrated that the claim is a nickel hydrogen fusion reactor. Further, the scientists say that the reactor is well beyond the research phase, and they plan to start shipping commercial devices within the next 3 months and start mass production by the end of 2011. Well, bookmark this article and remember the names of the people involved in this, because they'll probably end up, all the people involved in this will probably end up, they just hated their lives and they killed themselves, sadly, shot themselves in their car. Or so-and-so who was working on the cold fusion reactor hung himself today. It happens every time. Every time a cancer cure comes out or free clean energy, somebody just mysteriously doesn't want to live anymore. Funny how that always happens. Anything else today? Anything else I didn't cover? Anything else that's important? Oh, I was talking about this earlier. I'll mention this, although this was interesting. Apparently, An aircraft used by the Environmental Protection Agency was flown at low altitude above Fort Worth Monday morning. The twin propeller aircraft flew at a slow speed of about 115 miles per hour over particular areas in the city in a straight line at an altitude between 500 and 2,800 feet to conduct chemical and radiological surveys in the area for about 30 minutes to an hour at an unspecified time, according to the EPA public advisory. The flyer comes as a response to a request from the state of Texas to assist in environmental monitoring activities during the Super Bowl. What do they need to be flying over looking for chemical and radiological surveys around Fort Worth? That seems weird. What are they looking for? Because I've talked about several times about, you know, the oil, they call the Saudi Arabia of natural gas is under the city of Fort Worth. Are they planning on setting a bomb off in Fort Worth so they can close that off and have a police state here during the Super Bowl weekend? My goodness, that's scary stuff, man. I don't know. Oh, craziness. Well, we're going to wrap it up there for today. Chip and Banner is there for the Bills. We've got about a week left on that. And then we've got the donate button there so we can finish up the film and get the rest of the stuff we need for the See Right 2 soundtrack and the packaging and the artwork and all that stuff. We need help. And I need you to help us. If you want this important research and information to ever come out, we've got to have support. So please do so. Act accordingly. All right, folks. You guys take it easy. We'll see you next time.